Hi, everyone. I'm Councillor Teresa Kavanagh, and I'm welcoming you to this meeting tonight on a development application for 1047 Richmond Road. As you know, it's a very significant development, and I know that many of you are very concerned because I know that, for example, the communities like Wood Park and Woodruff North worked on a secondary plan, which had limits in terms of size and scale for these sites in this area to do with the transit corridor. So, and this is a request for far beyond that, in fact, double. So obviously that is a concern. And frankly, as someone as a councillor who's working on other secondary plans, it gives me concern because I don't feel comfortable working on secondary plans unless they're worth something, that the people that work on them in the community receive the value of seeing it honored. So however, applicants can put in their application, and they're counting on the fact the city is looking for density. And so it's their opportunity, as it were. I'm going to hand it over to one of the developers, but I just want to let people know that in terms of answering questions, we also have the planner on the file here, and that's Laurel McCrate, and I believe she has some city staff with her as well. But in terms of representing the developer at Fengate with Fotan, I'm going to pass it on to Nathan Patrician to lead us through a presentation so that we can see it up close and help you to guide you along. And then we'll do questions after. Okay, so we'll wait till after the presentation to answer questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Kavanagh. I'm just going to share my screen now, and hopefully this works. And let me know if you can see my screen.
Yep.
Excellent. Great. There's still a few people joining, but I'll just get started. So thank you everyone for attending tonight. This is a nice turnout for discussing the applications at 1047 Richmond Road. As Councillor Kavanagh introduced me, I'm Nathan Patrician. I'm a planner with Fotan Planning and Design, and I'm joined by a few others from the applicant team, including Lisa Della Rosa, who's an associate with Fotan Planning and Design, Andrew Konev, who's here on behalf of Fengate Asset Management. And then from our architecture team, we have Maya Musali, Ellie Cyrus, and Mansour Kazaruni, who'll be doing the presentation and walking you through the design. Just a little bit of background on the file. Official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment applications were submitted to the city on February 3rd, 2022, and they're currently under review by city staff. The file lead is here as well today, Laurel McCrate, and she can discuss the city's development review process for these applications. And these applications are likely going to a formal urban design review panel on April the 1st as well. So this slide here, which we can just jump right into, provides a little bit of context for the site and the surrounding area. So the aerial photo shows 4 points of view, as well as 4 images looking towards the site and surrounding context. The site's quite a large site. It's just over 10,000 square meters, which is just over a hectare in size. And the New Orchard LRT station, as many of you know, is expected in 2025 and is located within 100 meters of the property. So with that said, with the size and the proximity to transit, as well as the plan context, there is some opportunity here to look at what the site might accommodate. So if we're looking at the context, image number 2 is really quite good at looking at the corner of New Orchard Avenue, as well as Richmond Road, which shows the single-story vehicle car dealership, which exists currently at the site, as well as some of the high-rise context which currently exists around the property, including the 28-story condo building just to the east, as well as high-rise buildings along Ambleside and further to the west. To the north, there's the New Orchard Lodge, as well as walking paths and bicycle paths along the parkway. And the plan context here, which you can kind of see in the aerial photo, really seeks to accommodate high-rise built forms, specifically along Richmond Road on the northern edge, closer to the LRT stations. This slide, we can discuss City of Ottawa official plan policies. So with these applications, a review of the current City of Ottawa official plan, as well as the forthcoming new City of Ottawa official plan were reviewed. Under the current official plan, the site's designated traditional Main Street. And the plan context for the traditional Main Streets are a development pattern that seeks to promote a mix of uses, continuous storefronts, and densities that support pedestrian environment and transit. There are policies that encourage dense and mixed-use development near transit and that support increased walking and cycling. Typically, mid-rise development is permitted along main streets. However, a secondary plan or an area-specific policy can permit greater building heights or high-rise buildings. Policies for traditional main streets really support a building format that encloses the street and defines the street edge with more active frontages, and seeks to discourage vehicle uses such as parking lots or drive-through facilities, and really wants to relocate parking underground and away from the traditional main street. So then we can go into the new official plan policies. As these applications were submitted in February, they were submitted under the current official plan, but we do recognize that the new official plan has been council approved, but is not quite yet in full force and effect until it receives ministerial approval from the province. So the property is located in the inner urban transect area and is designated a Main Street corridor. This transect area is really planned for mid and high density development, with greatest densities located closest to transit stations and corridors. Similar to existing traditional Main Street policies, the inner urban
Nathan, you were frozen for me. I think you may have been frozen for others as well. I don't know if you've lost connection. So you may.
I'm back now.
Okay, good.
Sorry, I think I just got booted from the meeting for some reason, but can you see my screen again?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, where, if you can let me know, Councillor, where was I in my presentation?
Just talking about the official plan and
Sure.
how it's with the province.
Sure. I think then that leads us into the new official plan discussion, if I haven't gotten there quite yet. So the property is located within the inner urban transect area and is designated a Main Street corridor under the new official plan. And the site being designated a Main Street corridor can accommodate high-rise buildings, and those are typically to be located in hubs and along corridors. The definition of high-rise buildings has actually changed under the new official plan, where high-rise is now 10 to 40-story buildings. and those can be accommodated in hubs and corridors, corridors that I guess have a right of way of 30 meters or greater. And again, similar to traditional Main Street policies, Main Street corridor should provide a dense and mixed use environment and active entrances that face the corridor. So if we're going to the next slide here, the Cleary New Orchard area specific policy also applies to the property, and the property is designated station area and has active frontage policies that apply, which are quite similar to traditional Main Street policies as well. High-rise buildings are permitted in the station area and should generally follow the podium and tower approach in built form design. Building heights up to 20 stories are permitted at the subject site currently through density redistribution. However, considering the proximity to transit and other policies related to intensification, it may accommodate, be a candidate to accommodate greater densities here. New development in terms of design should provide transparent glazing and active main entrances that face the ground floor and the main street, which leads into public realm policies as well. So you can see in this image that there's a conceptual location for a future public park or plaza at Richmond Road and New Orchard Avenue. There's a provision for privately owned, publicly accessible spaces that are intended to serve the area's outdoor open spaces on private lands with appropriate programming and multiple functions. And again, pedestrian access is really directed to the ground level uses through the building design and through the public realm policies. There are urban design guidelines that apply to the property. The first of that being urban design guidelines for high-rise buildings, transit-oriented development guidelines, and urban design guidelines for traditional main streets. As this is a high-rise building, the first set of guidelines applies and really seeks to inform the building design and how the podium, middle, and top of the building really interact with the public realm. Transit-oriented development guidelines are applied to lands within 600 meters of transit, and traditional Main Street guidelines are location-based as well and apply to properties that front onto traditional main streets that are designated in the official plan. As this is an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment application, design details will be worked out and further refined through subsequent site plan control applications, and that'll be through discussions with city staff. So the existing zoning on the property is traditional Main Street zoning, and this zoning really implements the policies of the official plan and seek to, I guess, really frame the street and craft development to look like what the official plan policies are intended, which they do intend to accommodate a broad range of residential and non-residential uses through mixed use buildings. They seek to foster and promote compact building design, pedestrian-oriented development that can be accessed by pedestrians, cyclists, and transit. The current zoning permits a building height of 25 meters. However, you can see the surrounding context. It is permitted greater building heights, and there are policies that do support additional height at the property as well. And the zoning also requires active frontages and public realm interaction as well with high glazing at the commercial uses and at-grade uses. No vehicle parking is required as the site is located close to transit. However, 90 visitor parking spaces are required here, as well as bicycle parking at a rate of 0.5 spaces per unit. So before we get into the application, what was submitted as part of the applications in terms of design, this is a concept plan that was prepared for the pre-application consultation, and I can just run through a little bit of what that concept looked like. It located a new public park central to the site, which transitioned to a courtyard area that accommodated at-grade pedestrian use and vehicle pickup and drop-off. The greatest building heights were allocated towards the transit and as close as possible to that transit station, and then a podium wrapped around the perimeter of the site, so really enclosed that plaza, I guess, is central to the site. And then there was a bit of a podium just at the front here, and you can really see that through the conceptual massings just looking north there. When we got feedback from the city, they kind of gave feedback on the location of the park, wanting it to be located at the corner of New Orchard and Richmond Road, and looking for more of a transition from the towers and separation distance between those. So this rendering here shows the proposed development, and the site plan will really highlight some of the differences between the initial concept and what's being proposed now. So I can just run through some of the building statistics with you. There are 3 towers being proposed here of 36, 38, and 40 stories, and a total of 1,343 residential units. Tower A, which is just shown here on the left of the image, contains 371 residential units. Tower B, which is just hidden behind this one, contains 352 units. And Tower C contains 330 residential units. And then within the podium, there's 290 units, all of which are a mix of studio through to 3-bedroom units. And it is worth noting that I believe 53% of the units proposed here are 2-bedroom units or greater, and 203 units or 15% are barrier-free units throughout the development. At the corner of Richmond Road and New Orchard Avenue, there's a just over 1,000 square meter new public park proposed, in addition to 22,200 square meters of amenity space, which includes an internal courtyard plaza and retail space located at the ground level along Richmond Road and fronting the proposed park. There are 3 levels of underground parking containing 762 vehicle parking spaces and a total of 678 bicycle parking spaces. So to run through the amendments for the property, there is an official plan amendment application which would seek to amend the Cleary and New Orchard area specific policy, specifically policy 4.1.1 to allow high-rise 31+ story buildings at the property, and to amend Schedule C, which would amend the current 20-story permissions to allow building heights up to 40 stories, as well as 3 zoning bylaw amendments as well. So the first to allow a high-rise apartment building up to 40 stories in building height. There is an urban exception that's applied to the property, which seeks to have a setback above a 2-story podium. However, a 6-story podium here is proposed. And then there is a maximum interior side yard setback provision of 3 meters. However, a setback of 10.6 meters is proposed here, just to allow greater transition between the towers and the interior side yard. And this image here shows the zoning and policy framework and what could be done under that in comparison with the proposed massing. So the site plan here, if you recall the initial concept plan, you can see some of the differences that were taken into consideration after conversations with staff. The park has been relocated to the corner of New Orchard Avenue and Richmond Road. This podium has been extended along Richmond Road and contains retail space at grade. And also the internal plaza, I guess, is still maintained here as well. And now is a good time to hand it over to our architect team from IBI, I believe Mansour, and he can walk you through the design.
Thank you, Nathan. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mansour Kazarouni. I'm a partner at IBI Group Architects. Our architectural proposal for the site, as you've already heard, involves these 3 towers that step down. Tower A is 40 stories, and it goes to 38 stories to the tower on Richmond Road. And then Tower C, which is at the north end, is at 36 floors. They sit over six-story podium that encloses a courtyard which opens towards the south side, addressing the park that is located at the southern corner of the site at New Orchard and Richmond Road. The towers are located in a manner that they minimize the facing distance between the towers. And so we've got Tower B located sort of mid-site and obviously far away from the high-rise building, and then flanked by the two northerly towers. Can we go, sorry, just one other key aspect is that we have provided a peripheral sort of driveway at the north and the east end of the site, which accommodates all of the service-related functions, so that along the length of the property, there are no curb cuts. So we have an uninterrupted pedestrian and public realm. The next slide, please. This is a slide that shows you the uses at the ground floor. The primary vehicular access is from, I'm going to refer to the top of the drawing as north, knowing that north is actually diagonal to the site. But the primary vehicle access is from the north, where you come into this courtyard drop-off area. Just past that is the access to the underground ramp. So most of the vehicular access would occur from that peripheral road, which wraps around the site. Excuse me. And that courtyard is where we are providing access to the three lobbies that are shaded in the light yellow color, which are all accessed off of the courtyard. And the brighter yellow spaces are indoor amenity spaces that are provided at the ground floor level. The frontages, the key frontages on Richmond Road and New Orchard and facing the park are occupied by retail that's delineated in the pink color. There's, I believe, over 14,000 square feet of retail between the two spaces that's provided here. And then the remainder of the frontage on New Orchard is occupied by grade-related residential units, as well as on the east side, similarly, we have grade-related residential units. So there's been an effort to ensure that the majority of the frontages are active animated uses with entrances, uninterrupted public realm, opportunities for tree planting and enhancement of the sidewalks, and obviously activation through the use of retail on both Richmond and New Orchard. Each building has dedicated loading and service facilities, so that all of that can be internalized within the site to minimize kind of noise and disruption. There's covered kind of garage doors that bring you indoors and allow you to load and unload, etc., within each building in close proximity to the elevator course. Let's go to the next one, please. So once you get above that, we get into typical podium floor plans, where you start to see a mix of studios, 1s, 2s, and 3-bedroom apartments. The color coding refers to the different sizes. Also interspersed with this, at the two inside corners, you see indoor amenity spaces that are provided for the residents of the development. And then going to the next slide, when we get to the terrace above the 6th floor at the 7th level, the roof of the podium, which is shaded in the blue tone here, will be landscaped and programmed as outdoor amenity space. So for the higher rise buildings that look down, they will be looking at these landscaped rooftops. And then residential typical floors begin above that. The next slide, please. The residential floors are oriented along the length of most of these towers, with maybe one unit that's along the short end of the towers. And in relation to that, we have organized the balconies to predominantly be along the length of these buildings and just turn the corner on each of the short sides, which helps to break up the form a little bit, as I will show you shortly. Next slide, please. Parking, there are 3 levels of below grade parking. I believe I think Nathan, you said 678 parking spaces, and they are for residents and for visitors. So there will be parking below grade to accommodate both. Next. Also located below grade is bicycle parking in weather protected, obviously, areas. These are below grade in close proximity to the elevator cores. And next slide, please. I think we can go past the parking. So architecturally, what you're seeing is a view along Richmond Road, looking towards the 2 of the 3 towers. And the expression of the towers, you're seeing the balconies that create this horizontal expression, and we've juxtaposed them with these white vertical fins that run across the length, the longer face of these towers, but they actually fade. They go from wide to narrow and create movement and visual interest across the facade. And they come down into the podium and run across the podium and then wrap around the podium as well. So it's, in a way, it's a manner of unifying the podium and the tower expression by using these vertical fins. And then you see the balconies that just wrap the corners and then stop halfway across the short face of the building. You're also seeing, in contrast to the expression of the tower and the podium, a very transparent ground floor with a generous public realm with tree planting that obviously would have entrances and activation and animation of the public realm through the retail. Next slide, please. The other thing that is visible in these slides is the rooftops with the landscaped amenity spaces. This is showing you the northern face of the building with the covered vehicular access into the courtyard, and then the access to the parking, etc., that are all along this peripheral road that wraps the north and east side of the development. And the manner in which the fins are articulated plays up the contrast between some faces which are all glass and some which have the fins. So there's always a kind of visual variety, no matter which vantage point you look at these buildings from. Next slide, please. And yet another view. This is looking northwest towards the park, which you're seeing at the corner. The next slide, please. This is with the tallest building in the foreground, and here you're looking at the corner of Richmond Road and New Orchard Avenue with the park in the foreground and the retail that fronts onto it. And once again, you see the sort of juxtaposition of the glass facade with the vertical fins. Next slide, please. And this is more at eye level along Richmond Road, looking notionally towards the corner. Next slide. I believe it's a view from the park, from across the street. With you see the LRT station, the New Orchard LRT station on the bottom right-hand side of the screen, with the park across the street, retail frontages with canopies, that overlook the park, and then access into the courtyard that leads to the lobbies and the entrances into the various buildings, the six-story podium, and then the tower element that is integrated by the vertical fence. Next slide. This is another view from the south face, just giving you yet another vantage point of the development. And the next one, I think it's getting a bit repetitive, so we can keep going. This is a close-up from the northern peripheral road showing the covered driveway access and generally the north face at grade. Next slide, please. You're also seeing that balconies are fully integrated into the development, so there aren't too many projecting balconies, which creates a fairly simple, clean, unified facade expression. And I'll stop there and happy to answer any questions.
I believe that concludes the applicant presentation and the design component there. So Councillor Kavanagh, I'll hand it back to you.
Yeah, thank you. And there's already a number of questions, and you did have questions submitted to you earlier, and I don't know if you integrated the answers into your presentation, but you were given many questions ahead of time. But anyway, we're likely to have the similar questions. Is there anything at all that can be done by residents to change the height of these buildings? That's a city question as well as a developer question.
Yeah, I mean, I can start by addressing that as well, and maybe Lisa, you'd like to jump in as well. These are official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment applications, and they were just submitted to the city on February 3rd. And through the process, maybe Laurel can also speak to the process. There is opportunity, including this, to provide feedback and give I guess concerns related to building heights or whatever else there might be. And as part of that process, we will be given formal comments from the city. We'll be getting comments from the Urban Design Review Panel, and we'll also be receiving comments through evenings like tonight, which we can take back and work through what might be the most appropriate changes to the property or changes to the site. Lisa or Laurel, I'm not sure if you'd like to add anything to that.
Laurel?
Lisa was talking.
Sorry, I was muted. I was muted. I had a dog barking earlier. So I was just going to mention that what we have in front of you is our request to the city, and the city would have to vote on this at planning committee. So the heights that were shown today are the proponent's request, and we have, as Nathan indicated, to go through some steps to get to the point where we have refined this proposal. So with that, I'll leave it to say that it's by no means at this point a done deal. There are still some steps to go through, and we've just started this process.
Okay, thank you. Lisa, did you want to add anything, Laurel?
Thanks, Councillor. No, I think Nathan and Lisa summed it up pretty well, that this is basically their first kick at the can. So they come in with their best case scenario. The city reviews the applications. We go out to the public and ask for comments. And through the circulation process, we take all the comments that are received from members of the public, internal departments, and technical agencies, come up with our comments and provide them back to the applicant for them to go back and review and consider. Then they'll provide their subsequent submission, and it's up to them whether or not they would like to make any changes. And we go back and forth until the city is either satisfied with the proposal, or if we can't come to an agreement, we go to planning committee, and ultimately the decision lies with the 10 members on planning committee, and then following that, members of council. So it's not a done deal at this point. We're at the very beginning stages. The comment period actually closed. I believe it's today, but we accept comments throughout the process. So even if you haven't reached out and contacted me with your comments by today, we'll take them at any time. So please, if you haven't provided your comments, do so at your earliest convenience.
Thank you, Laurel. And Connie has provided your email so that you can send directly. You can certainly copy my office as well, as many people have. Ken, I'm just going to preface your question. Ken was asking about parking spaces and about, is there going to be any car sharing programs to make up for the fact that only half the people are getting parking spots? So are you looking at having car sharing on the premises?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the items that we actually come to the community as well as transportation staff and speak to them about. So if that's something that is being looked at here or that the community would like to see, we can certainly take that comment away. Like we kind of said earlier, this is our first submission and our first kind of go at this. So what those parking spaces look like hasn't been quite yet refined. It is quite an early design. So we can certainly look at if there are spaces down there which might accommodate car share, as well as look at the surrounding area and see if where other car shares are provided as well. And any other measures that we can, I guess, promote transit use or shared modes of transportation.
Okay, thank you. Is one thing that is being asked is it going to be rental or condos? Are they rentals?
I believe that while the exact allocation of what's rental and what's condo is not yet determined, the owners are contemplating a mix.
Yeah, hi, Andrew Coney with Thank You Estimate. Yes, Mansour, you're correct. At this time, we have not made a final decision, but it's very likely to be a combination of both rental and a condominium.
Thank you. Allison, you asked about why city planners aren't asking them to go back to the drawing board. Well, this is part of the process, and I should remind people that this is not a required meeting. I've asked for this meeting over and above. Generally speaking, it goes to planning committee where the discussion takes place, but I felt very strongly that this needed to be presented to the community at large. And the city planner is taking note of all the comments. So that's part of it. The other thing that was mentioned was about the urban design review panel, which looks at the design. So that's another aspect. Is the building being placed on top of the six-story podium? So is that added to the stories?
No, that includes the podium. Go ahead, Mansour.
No, that's fine. You answered the question. It does include the podium.
It includes it. Okay,
Yep.
So that's not over and above. And this is a question for the city, and this is related to the fact that this whole area had a secondary plan. Sue, you're asking about have we looked at the cumulative impact of all the anticipated development, because there is other development that is coming along. And it's more intensification. This is already one of the heaviest density areas, probably in the city, as dense as downtown because of the buildings that are already there. So are they taken into consideration? That is related to the fact that the official plan makes an overall plan on where density is, but I don't know if you want to add anything, Laurel, in terms of the city on cumulative impact.
Yep, so when applicants submit their plans and studies, like specifically transportation impact assessment would take a look at developments that are either coming on stream or that have come on stream to see the cumulative impact on the surrounding road networks. Same thing goes for infrastructure. We're obviously looking at capacity for storm water, sanitary, and water issues. The planning rationales sometimes do acknowledge developments in the vicinity. Specifically, they'll describe, like Nathan did, kind of the surrounding context to the north, east, and south, and that would include the proposal at 100 New Orchard and the proposal at 1071 Ambleside. So yes, we do take a look at them individually, but we also do take a look at them on the whole. But I think the larger question would be, because if we are entertaining a proposal at 1071 Ambleside for an increase in height and density, would we not look at this corner for an increase in height and density? And the answer is no. We would look at those ones on their own merits and based on the policies that are in place at the time.
Okay, thank you. Does the plan call for removal of any current houses? Well, no, this is just on the, Ian, this is just for the Metro car lot. Can I confirm that? There's no.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. And I probably people are wondering about New Orchard Lodge right behind, which is a separate parcel. And at this time, there's no changes there. Is parking for retail underground or above ground?
Underground.
Okay. Is there going to be a local architectural firm engaged for this design?
IBI is a local architectural firm. We have offices in Ottawa. And yeah.
Okay. Electric vehicle accommodation considered and included in design?
I believe they will be for sure. I think EVs are the way of the future, and it would be prudent to facilitate electric vehicle charging.
Okay, so in terms of guidelines, I think it would be useful to know the percentage, et cetera. And those are standards that should be developed that the city would be working on with the province to increase that that need across the city for any new development.
If I may, I should note that these applications do not include the site plan control application as well, and that would be coming at a later date. So a lot of these details, like electric vehicle charging, materiality, location of like bicycles and things like that, a lot of those details will be worked out also through the site plan control applications. And this is really looking at the proposed massing for the development and how the site might develop over time.
Okay, no, thank you, Nathan.
Of course.
However, I think people do need to know an overall feel for the place. Has there been any contact with the long-term care facility, New Orchard, and how the impact is on them?
No, we have not talked to them, but they are circulated obviously on this application, so we expect their comments.
Okay, so part of circulation. How will the shadow of the buildings impact long-term care home? There is illustrations. This question was from Steph McCallum. There is illustrations in the application that show the shadows. We can dig it up for you if you like, and show you because it shows. Yeah, where the retail parking is, I think that was already answered. I guess it would be similar if there's a similar example of retail parking being underground. I think probably the is it McRae Street down where the Farm Boy is, where there's underground parking? Is that sort of a similar idea? I'm trying to think of an example, or downtown location, because this is sort of unusual for our area to have retail underground parking.
Yeah, I mean, we have done it in other instances. In many ways, it actually works because you get weather protected sort of parking. And I have to say that the retail is not, it's not a 25,000 square foot grocery store or something where, you're going to have enormous hordes of people driving here as destination retail. There will be some who drive here, but the the retail will largely serve the local community, I believe.
Okay. How will Richmond Road accommodate traffic with this and the other plans? I think that would be a question for both city staff, because I think we have somebody here on that, and your own traffic studies.
Our traffic consultant's actually online. He ended up being able to call in. He was the one that was having problem with Zoom. So I think Austin should be able to talk to the impact on Richmond Road. Austin, if you're there. But you might have to unmute him. I can give you the phone number. If that's possible.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. Apologies. Technical issues with my internet and getting connected. So, apologize you can't see me, but my name is Austin Shi. I'm a translator with Parsons. With the traffic assessment for this site, and to answer the question regarding Richmond Road traffic, the simplest answer is we're leveraging.
Hello, I'm sorry to interrupt. Is it possible for you to put your volume higher?
Oh, sorry. Is this better?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, that's better.
Okay, sorry about that. The site, the proximity to the LRT station.
Oh, you got low again. When you were testing, it went louder, and now you're back to low again, low volume.
I'm putting my mouth as close as I can to this. Hopefully, this works. Hear me?
Okay, go ahead.
So I'll keep it brief. We're going to leverage the LRT station that's across the street in terms of location. That's the first way. And as was mentioned previously, there's still a site plan to come, and there are ways which the applicant and staff can work on finding measures and strategies to encourage more people to take transit, and that's all part of the planning process for transit-oriented development. So that'll occur all along the corridor for all new developments that are occurring along Richmond. Thirdly is that with the cycling facilities that are being promoted, the new designs that are being done as part of stage 2, opportunities as well to look for alternate sustainable modes of travel to, as an alternative to the car. So those are some of the ways in which we're going to combat the traffic issues on. Thank you.
Thanks. There's a question just to tack onto that about traffic impact on New Orchard and Ambleside. Is that being taken into consideration?
Yeah, so that is part of the study that was done. We looked at it, and the traffic that's being added to the network can be managed by the existing structure. One thing I want to point out is that if you look at the plan, there are 2 access points. So while there is one access point, there is another access point off Richmond Road. So not all traffic from this site will funnel to a single location. It will be split, and that'll help ease the burden on either one of those streets.
Okay. Thank you. Someone's asking, Joanne's asking my position. My position is I'm concerned. I said that from the top, that I'm concerned a secondary plan was done with the communities, and that it is being overridden. So that is my major concern. So that is where I'm at, Joanne. Okay. How many dwelling units currently exist among 3 Ambleside buildings, Osgood Current and Park Place on Richmond Road? I don't know if we have that off the top of our head, but we do have that there's 2,588 in Ambleside alone. I do have that. And
I can quickly look that up, and I'll post it in the chat there because I have that information.
Yeah. So I do have that one, and that that the density is pretty high in this community between New Orchard and Richmond Road, with a density of about 31,000. So we'll get that number for you. Okay, we've already asked about rental and condo. It's still looking at it, could be a mix. Is there any requirement for reduced rent or incentives to encourage retail in the building? In terms of, I guess this has happened in newer buildings in Westboro. So is there any incentives for in terms of the commercial?
No, we have not explored it yet, but we're open to obviously having a discussion.
Joanne's asking, any affordable housing? Thank you, Joanne. Why not submit when the existing zoning bylaw?
Again, this is, we are open to having these discussions with the city. Obviously, it will depend on the final tenure and the size of the building, but we want to hear your councillors and the community's feedback. So we take into account and have these conversations about, the affordable housing component of this development.
Okay, thank you. The question is why you're going over 36 plus stories when the secondary plan called for 20 stories? How does this integrate with and respect the neighboring communities?
The height question here. The Planning Act, which is Ontario legislation, does afford owners the right to amend secondary plans and provincial and municipal policies. And what we're doing is we're looking at a lot of policies in the current official plan, as well as the forthcoming official plan as well. There are policies for intensification in the area, I guess in target areas of intensification, which to include traditional main streets. And those policies state that greatest building height should be located closest to transit stations. So what's being considered here is the existing context and realizing that there are other high-rise buildings, including up to 28 stories right next door to the site, 26 stories and 28 stories to the west along Richmond Road. So we're contemplating this site as having opportunity to accommodate the greatest building heights as it is closest to transit. And the other key point of information I think I should discuss as well is that the new official plan, first of all, redefines high-rise buildings as 10 to 40 stories. And those buildings can be accommodated either in hubs under the new official plan or along Main Street corridors that have a right-of-way width of greater than 30 meters. And if you're including the protected right-of-way along Richmond Road, which is 26 meters, as well as the Byron Linear Park and other publicly owned lands that are within that right-of-way, or what would be considered the right-of-way, that is approaching, I believe, closer to 60 meters. So we're also considering those new official plan policies that do direct those high-rise buildings towards these corridors.
Okay, thank you. What feedback did the city provide to developer about height during pre-consultation? I guess that's for you, Laurel.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Kavanagh. The conversations between the city and applicants during pre-consultation are confidential, and we give comments that hopefully will provide for a better proposal. We try not to say, go to 20, go to 17, go to 22. We try to work on the design, the integration within the surrounding community, site massing, but the conversations we have are confidential. So I'm not going to be disclosing at this time what was said.
Thank you. Joanne makes a statement that the proposed heights are on top of the six-story podium. I think we've already clarified that is not the case, that the heights include the six-story podium. Can I just have that reconfirmed?
Yes, that is the case.
Thank you.
They are inclusive.
Thank you. There's a question about air flight pathways. Is that taken into consideration?
I don't believe we have looked at the flight path. We're happy to do that, but given the high-rise buildings that are in the immediate area, I'd be very, very surprised if this was in the immediate flight path, but it's something we will look at.
Okay. There's a question about how do these buildings affect the air circulation flow with other buildings in the area? There is a wind study. I don't know if that is part of what they mean, but I know that there is a wind study on the buildings. Does that include air circulation? I'm not sure how to answer that one.
Yeah, I can confirm that a wind study was done and that's mainly to deal with, are we creating wind tunnels and such. There is some recommendations in there that did indicate that there is some areas that we have to focus on to make sure we're adjusting for that. With regards to circulation, with you, Councillor, I'm not sure what that means.
Okay. Okay. Airflow. In terms of the design of the buildings, they've been considered about migratory bird patterns, such as Mud Lake, which is very close by. And just in terms of bird area, I guess Wings, there's an organization called Wings that deals with a lot of this stuff, and there is a city report on this. Are these being taken into consideration to prevent bird strikes?
Yeah, I mean, the design does follow the bird-friendly guidelines. So we are integrating bird-friendly glazing as per the guidelines, 90% of the glazing up to 16 meters, I believe. So the short answer is yes, it does.
Thank you. And has the NCC been consulted? Are they part of the circulation, and have they given any feedback?
The NCC wasn't circulated on this application due to there's no lands abutting the NCC. All applications are posted on the city's website, and should the NCC have any concerns, they're welcome to submit their comments.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I lost my place. Pardon me. Is there potential of restricting parking in the adjacent neighborhood, i.e. Wood Park, due to this development? I think that's probably more for me in terms of, yes, the parking can be restricted. That's up to the communities. It's actually been working with Wood Park about certain streets that wanted to see some restrictions, and we can work with others. There's a petition process to make sure that people on the street are all involved and have a say. And if you want to put parking restrictions on your street, you need 66% of the property owners to agree to it. So that can be done case by case. Is everyone able to hear us? Is there any problem with hearing?
I can hear you clearly, Councillor.
Okay, all right. I think that the comments may have been from earlier from the phone conversation. Are there existing fire and emergency services in the area able to accommodate the level of population intensification? I believe that's part of the process for the city. Can you confirm that, Laurel?
Sorry, can you ask that again, Councillor?
About existing fire and emergency services in the area, are they able to accommodate this level of population intensification?
Asking if they're able to respond to emergencies, or are we talking about water for fire flows, for firefighting? I don't understand.
So I think what they're talking about is the fact that we're having a higher density. Do existing fire and emergency services, are they able to accommodate towers, these new buildings? Is there enough service? I know that that's been a question in the past about water, is it available? Is the fire services, emergency services? Because there's more population, so it needs more services. That's
Right,
kind of,
sure.
Yeah.
So for example, for water, for fire flows, for these applications for official plan amendments and zoning bylaw amendments, all that's asked for in terms of engineering is adequacy of services. The city wants to ensure there's adequate capacity for sanitary, stormwater, and water. When it gets down, if and when this applications such as these are approved and we get down to site plan, then we get into the nitty-gritty details about fire flows and water pressure, the very minute details. Right now, we're just checking to see that there is capacity and density at this level can be accommodated. So the adequacy of services studies that Fengate and Foten have submitted are reviewed internally by a multitude of departments that will look that there is capacity for emergency services in terms of fire flows for fighting fires.
thank you. So was
So
that
further, Councillor, I just wanted to jump in there because I think there was concerns about potentially increases of population and whether, you know, fire, police are adequately able to deal with it. Developments pay development charges, and that goes into funding those sorts of initiatives and making sure that the city has those funds available. So as more development shows up, those you get the equivalent to help offset some of that sort of those costs. So this development will be bringing in development charges when building permits are picked up.
Yep, thank you very much, Lisa. And I should also remind that in the new official plan, the target for intensification is 60% in urban areas. Therefore, you know, with only 40% being in green fields outside of the current boundaries that of urban areas now. So that implies that the city is got to look at all the services for this density. So that's part of what the new official plan looks at. Traffic pattern is to hope cars become obsolete. Well, I don't think, Matt, that cars will become obsolete, but they will less reliance on cars, certainly with the station there, and more cycling infrastructure, more walking infrastructure, and having 15-minute neighborhood capacity so that we have more services close by. That's what that would be the goal overall across the city. Yeah, cars are still going to be around, as we've talked about. So how will this development increase in population affect schools, parks, green space, and area amenities in terms of the for the area, since many of them are already challenging for the existing communities? Well,
From the school's perspective, I believe that the school boards are circulated. We've received comments on for other developments that indicate whether there's school issues or if there's comments from the school board. So I'm assuming the same would happen here. And as part of the circulation, we would find out if there is school issues or accommodation problems, but that's as far as I can. And then with regards to parks, we are introducing a new park here. So with the increase in density, you are seeing an uptake in there's some additional parkland here. The secondary plan of this area indicates some new parkland and some cycling routes and connectivity that are green corridors to the NCC pathways that will be developed as part of applications coming forward. And I can't remember, there was a third thing. There was parks, schools, and
a green space and area amenities.
So yeah, and so the amenity here is there will be some amenities that are private amenities, which are the balconies and some of the rooftops of the podium. That'll be amenities for the residents in the buildings, but the POPs that Nathan was explaining, so that public-private open space, so that courtyard where we're sort of highlighting on the screen now, would become an amenity area that also could have patios, could have benches, and that sort of courtyard feel that would be available to sort of anybody that wanders through.
Okay. Okay, Nancy, I'm not, in terms of your, I'm not going to read the comments, but I'm going to read your questions. When did 40 floors become an option? And you're raising a number of concerns about sewer and water and other things. These are taken into consideration, and which is part of the process that Laurel takes them through. Do you want to add to that, Laurel? About particularly about, we've already talked about emergency services, but about sewer and water.
Yeah, and I mentioned that before about adequacy of services. So Fengate and Fotan have to demonstrate to the city that there's adequate capacity for this density in infrastructure, if any of it needs to be upgraded. So our professionals in-house will review this study and provide them comments on it. And obviously, we are not going to recommend approval of a development for which there is no capacity. So that's something that we take very seriously, and that will be looked at. Just the other question about when did 40 floors become an option? I think you addressed it earlier on, Councillor Kavanagh, and so did Nathan actually, that any applicant in the city, all over the city, rural, urban, suburban, can apply for anything they want, and then it's reviewed within the city by planners, all the various departments, and for zoning and official plans, it goes to planning committee. So technically anything is an option. Anyone can apply for what they want. It becomes whether or not it's feasible and it's appropriate and it represents good planning. So Foten is within their right to come in with 40 stories, and we will determine if it is appropriate for this site.
Okay, thank you. I know there's concern about parking overflow into the community, into the neighborhoods. I've heard this before with other developments as well. When people move into these buildings, they pay for a parking spot or they don't pay for a parking spot. If they don't, they are very heavily at risk. It's quite a huge gamble, and frankly, I don't think it would be worth it to them. As our neighbors or visitors going to, that yes, there's possibility that you could have cars showing up. But as I've said before, in terms of regulating parking, I can work with communities on changing the parking in their streets if that's a concern to them. Okay, can the new station actually accommodate everyone taking the train? It's one of the smaller stations. So I don't have stage 2 LRT people here, but I don't know if anyone is able to answer that question from the city side. But I believe, yes, that was the plan all along, that intensification was expected to be around stations. So it was able to handle the capacity. Is there anyone from the city side who can confirm?
Hi, Councillor Kavanagh. I just wanted to jump in. I'm Pat McMahon with the transportation group. I don't know the exact capacity within the station. However, as you've mentioned, these things have been considered. We can certainly look into this kind of capacity and provide comment back if it's available publicly.
Okay. Thank you. So there's a comment here about the neighborhood was already dense before, so you don't have to worry what happened in terms of why is more. I don't know who said that. A city rep saying that your neighborhood is already dense. The fact that there was a secondary plan showed that they were looking at putting in more intensification and densifying. So that was already in the works, Renee. The question is that it was capped at 20 stories, and this is going beyond that. But it was a part of the plan that that more density was going to be put in. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Just looking to see questions. As I said, we won't be reading statements, but they will be kept. We are keeping the chat, so we will have the record of them. What are the plans for the multi-use paths along the parkway? Well, that's NCC. And we've already mentioned that NCC was not part of the circulation of this, but they're, in terms of the pathways, they do have plans for working on the whole south shore of the river. So there is plans, these pathways that are happening. Okay, there's a question about why is up to 40 stories needed? What is the logic of that? And just a question on what the likelihood of rental versus condo for the 3 towers.
I can jump in on the 40 stories. What's interesting here is there's a redistribution of height as well. So as much as the height is there is some permitted density on this site, and I don't have that number currently on hand, but what's happening is we are redistributing it. So yes, we are asking for more density than originally proposed, but sometimes people get fixated on the height number versus the number of units. What's important with towers is how that ground level feels, and whether a tower is going up 20 stories, 40 stories, 13 stories, how does it feel at that ground level is an important thing. And I think if you were to walk around some of the more dense neighborhoods, whether it's here in Ottawa or Toronto or New York, and you asked how tall is that building, how tall is that building, you sort of get to a point where you know it's a taller building, but you don't know how many floors it actually is. So with regards to why 40, you know, it was what our clients sort of asked for, and is it something that we could justify with the policies that the city has for development in an area that is close to transit. So we could rationalize a 40-story height based on the number of units and the design of the site. If it was a big 40-story block, there wouldn't be support for it. It's a bunch of elements that work together to create a development that aligns with sort of the direction the city is going and the policies direct. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Do the wind studies include all the proposed developments? And I think that's a good question in terms of wind tunnels. Ambleside is already difficult for walking. And I can tell you Richmond Road is difficult for cycling based on the buildings that are there. So how is that taken into consideration?
The wind study only looks at the site and the immediate surrounding context, so its impacts on the public right of way, the internal courtyard plaza, the drive aisle that's to the north and to the east of the property, but doesn't look much further than the site and its immediate context.
Okay. We'd have a request to, sorry, Nathan, to close the screen because I think if people would like to see the faces, I guess, rather than just leave it at that. Thank you. Apologies that was left up. Will the city consult NCC at our request, or should we do it ourselves? The NCC can be consulted, but it's not on the list because it's not directly adjacent, so it doesn't follow in the guidelines. I don't mind telling them myself. When would the construction start and when would it be finished? It's obviously a very broad question at the moment.
Andrew Conner with Tengate again. The construction start, obviously, we still have to go through the public consultation process and the approval process. So that's probably the start is, I would envision, probably a couple of years away at a minimum. And in terms of duration of construction, it really will depend on the final size and scale of the buildings and the phasing of the project. So it could be between 3 to 5 years of construction after that.
Okay, thank you. In terms of the wind study, is it accurate to say the wind study does not look at the effect of wind to Richmond Road and Byron Linear Park, and that the current design is above the thresholds? What in terms
With
of the
regards to the wind study, sorry, the city has guidelines for wind studies to be what has to be included in those wind studies. And as far as we're aware, our consultant, who's not with us today, did address all of the parameters and requirements of that wind study. But again, the city hasn't given us our first round of comments yet. So if there is additional information from a wind perspective that is needed, that's something that we can take back and get results or questions answered on.
Okay. Thank you. Can parking restrictions allow street residents but not transit, condo, overflow, or retail parking? At this time, no. If you restrict parking, it's for everyone. So you have to make up your mind of what kind of parking on the street. It's not by right to park on a street for one versus the other at this. So the only time where you have permit parking, which is what you're talking about, is in areas where there is no parking otherwise for the residents, such as a downtown area where they traditionally parked on the street because that was all they had at the time. But that is not the case here when people have driveways. So generally speaking, if you change the parking, it's for everyone. So that's how it works. Okay, if anyone's having trouble hearing, and I'm really sorry if you have some issues, this is being recorded. This meeting is going to be available, so you will be able to listen to it after. And I apologize if there's any technical problems. What resident amenities are located in the buildings?
I think it's a bit early to actually speak to the amenity programming, but typically there are a host of health and wellness and social and kind of family-oriented amenities that tend to get incorporated into these developments. It's just way too early in the process for us to program that, but that would be the thrust of where the amenities would be focused.
Okay. How much frontage between Richmond Road and the podium?
So Richmond Road actually, it changes because there's a right turn lane onto New Orchard. And so generally from the property line to the podium is about 2.5 meters roughly. But obviously there is a public side to it. And I want to say it's at least twice that. But it really depends on where you are on Richmond Road, because the curb is not kind of just a straight line. It meanders a little bit. So we can provide more granular information along sections of Richmond Road, but I'd say it's safe to work with around 5 meters.
Okay, thank you. Is light pollution taken into consideration in terms of the area for, I guess,
I mean, yeah, typically light pollution is when we're lighting particularly the night sky and doing things like uplighting and all practices that we tend to avoid in all of the projects that we do. There will be light spillage from within these residential units out onto, just projecting out. So, and that's hard to control, but certainly there will not be things like uplighting or direct lighting of the night sky that will be incorporated into this development, or, you know, illuminated rooftop features and things like that.
Okay, I'm just going to rush through a bit because we are getting near the end. We've been here for almost an hour and a half. So I'm just going to look for questions. And if anything gets missed, please send them in and we'll make sure they get answered. Okay. Okay, Stephanie, you're asking if Lisa is with the city. No, she's not. She's with the developer. So she's answering questions on behalf of the developer. And I apologize if that was not clear. She's part of the team that has come with FOTAN. Okay. In terms of the density of the community, yes, this is a very high density area already. I'm quite aware of that. We have the numbers on that in terms of the density. So that is something we're quite aware of. In terms of the provincial level about the official plan, if you're talking about new intensification plan, you're talking about the new official plan, which is currently been taken to the next level, to the province for their approval. I can tell you that the province recently did a report on affordable housing where they're looking at every opportunity for more housing. So at this point in time, the province is in favor of intensification very much. You can see their report on affordable housing, which concentrates quite a bit on intensification and more opportunities for building homes in urban areas. So you certainly can speak to your provincial representative, but I can tell you that that's where they are right now, just so you're aware. Okay, I'm sorry, I think we're going to have to wrap it up now. I think we're getting basically the same kinds of questions, but I appreciate it in terms of your questions. In terms of, I'm just going to answer one more about transparency. This is transparency. This is where you're getting opportunity to ask questions directly at the earliest opportunity. Since this was just filed, we scheduled the meeting as quickly as possible. In terms of when developers meet with the city, that is not available. It's no different than if someone came with their house and decided, can I do this? Can I do that? These are proposals, and that's where the city allows them to put forward a proposal, but doesn't necessarily accept them. And I have seen examples where they have not moved forward. So that's where it is right now. Okay, so at this time, I think we're gonna wrap up. I don't know if there's any comments you want to make to finish up on the developer side. Oh, here's a good question. Sorry, I apologize. This is one that we always have to ask. What would be a price of a unit?
Well, I think we still have to determine the size and the scale of this project, and the tenure is more important, whether it's a rental or condo. So we're years away from that, but we'll let everybody know when we get there. But I do want to thank everybody for coming, and we do appreciate your comments. You know, we will take them into consideration as we work through the process, and I'm sure there's going to be more public engagement as we progress through this process. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. And Laurel, we're going to wrap up with you on next steps, because I think it's important for people to understand the process that goes on here.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So as Councillor Kavanagh indicated, this was a community meeting at her request. It is not mandatory from the city. The statutory public meeting required for an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment is planning committee. And right now a date has not been confirmed for that meeting. I know in the circulation that went out in the materials, there is a target date, and that's under the Planning Act that we are supposed to aim for, but that likely will not happen on an application of this magnitude. So if any of you are worried in the next couple months, all right, the date is probably in a month or two, we won't be heading to that planning committee date. Right now, we are still collecting comments from members of the public and internal, external agencies, and then I will put together a comment letter that summarizes everything and provide that to FOTEN and Fengate. And then they take that away and they'll consult with their consulting team and then resubmit to the city. Once I receive the resubmission, I will send out another update to the community to let you know that the second submission has been received. I'll highlight some of the key changes, and then I will also link you to the materials so that you can review them. When we do confirm a planning committee date, I'll send you ample notice so that you can put that in your calendars and that you are all welcome to attend. Members of the public are welcome to either submit in writing, or if you would like to make a presentation to the committee, you're welcome to do so, but you are limited to 5 minutes. After planning committee renders their decision, it rises to city council, who I mentioned ultimately has the final say. And then because these applications are official plan amendments and zoning bylaw amendments, they are eligible for appeal by members of the public. And that's quite a ways away. But as for next steps, like I mentioned, if you haven't sent me your comments yet, please do so. You can email them to me, or you can mail them to City Hall. I'm not physically at City Hall, but I have been receiving many comments by mail. So if email is not your preferred choice, please do send a letter to me in the mail, and rest assured that I am receiving them. And if you have any questions following this meeting, feel free to contact me. I think that's it for me, Councillor. If there's any other questions, I don't know, but I'm happy to answer them offline as well.
Okay, Ian's asking how many comments you've received so far. I think quite a few.
I think the last count, Ian, you're testing my memory. It was around 75 people, I believe, up close to 80 with some of the mail-ins.
Okay, and that's helpful for your feedback. It's important for you to say. I do have one question, actually, Laurel. I don't know if this is something I can ask you, but in terms of the podium, this is something I'm surprised no one asked, but having 6 floors as a it struck me as pretty high, and I don't know if that's typical, especially on a main street, because I think one of the concerns that I've heard, and I didn't see it mentioned, but was a canyon effect, was just a little too high on the front, without the setback being just too high.
Yeah, and that's a great question. And I'm definitely not an urban design guru. We have urban designers who work on the file alongside me, and Mansour might be able to step in case I misstep here. But the secondary plan does allow for podiums of 6 stories. And so the plan outlines that these are permitted. And if, Fengate comes in with 6 stories, that's permitted under the plan. That's the design direction that the plan has set out. Yeah.
I'll just add that I don't think proportionately it's out of place. We just heard about, the right of way width, and, you typically relate the street wall to the width of the right of way. And I think in this case, it is proportionate. So I think 6 stories is appropriate in this location.
I know that further east on Richmond Road, there was some examples where, and I take it that they were on both sides of the road, but there were, it was called the Canyon, and where development was quite high on both sides, and it's off-putting for sure. It does not feel like a main street, and I think that was a concern. Even though on the opposite side, I take it that it's quite different here because we've got the state on the other side, but I think people are looking for something that's going to give that Main Street feel, that They want it to be inviting. These are people in the community that will not be living in the buildings necessarily. Most of them are going to stay in their homes. And what is inviting them to come over to this area? I appreciate the green space. I appreciate the open space. Those are positives. So, in terms of the retail, I think we're all looking for 15-minute communities. So it's got to be things that we want that are a benefit to the community. I've heard mentions of wanting a local pub, coffee shops, or small grocery stores. So, something where you can get everything close by. So I've heard this as well, and I just wanted to throw that out because so you got the feel of it, because those are the comments I've heard from people just chatting with them about projects like this. Okay, well, thank you very much, and please keep your comments coming. Send them directly to Laurel. You can copy me, absolutely, but it's important for Laurel to have them for the file going forward, and we'll certainly talk about next steps in terms of any dates that we get. But there's no prediction at this time because given the scale of this may take some time. So thank you very much. Thank you, Fotan, for your team. I appreciate you being available. You have made yourself available for a variety of questions, and that's appreciated. Thank you, Laurel and Pat from the city. Great help to show that this is being worked on, and all the things that are involved for such a large project. And as has been mentioned, we're getting a lot of them in the community. So we need that feeling of understanding that there's a theme here that this is all being taken into consideration. Okay, have a great rest of your evening. Take care.